Hi everyone, it's Jonathan from Ars Technica here. You're joining me on a slightly cloudy morning. Right now we are in Massachusetts. We're about to head down to Lime Rock in Connecticut, which is an awesome racetrack. And we're going to do that in this, which is Ferrari's 488 GTB. It's a pretty amazing car. This is Ferrari's first mid-engined turbocharged supercar since the almighty F40. Behind us is a 3.9 litre twin-turbo direct injection V8. It's a similar engine to the one that we experienced in the front of the California T. In this case, it puts out 661 horsepower, which is enough to propel this car from 0 to 60 in about 3 seconds, and it will live with almost everything on the road. If you've seen some of our previous Ferrari reviews, you'll know that the company loves putting all of its buttons on the steering wheel. That's because, it's F1 inspired, and F1 drivers don't have dashboards, they just have steering wheels. So you have, for example, turn signals, your horns, windscreen wipers, the headlights, button to make the dampers work on bumpy roads, start stop button for the engine to turn it on, Manatino dial which switches it from wet mode to sport to race, CT off is ESC off, which we will not be playing with because these are the public roads today. On the back of the wheel there's some little buttons which control the infotainment system. Obviously you have these gigantic shift panels here. This is your the volume and the stereo controls for the hi-fi, which is okay. It's at this point, honestly, it's a pretty old system. You can't get CarPlay in this car or anything like that right now. Over here you have some controls that let you see the car's data, what's your tire pressure like, is the car warm enough. You have your cruise control, which again they call the pit lane speed limiter. It's a little bit fiddly to use. Obviously there's no semi-autonomous driving features on this. It's a Ferrari after all. If you want a car that drives itself, I think the idea is you don't buy a Ferrari. This is the GTB, which is a hardtop. We've got a fair amount of carbon fibre around here. This nice little transmission tunnel, some on the dash. Otherwise it's acres of this nice brown leather, this nice black leather. There's a relatively decent amount of storage space in here. You've got a couple of USB ports which connect to the audio system. There is a pretty large trunk up front that would certainly fit a TSA approved carry-on, although I'm pretty sure that anything you keep for too long back here, because you're right next to the engine, or up front, is going to get a little bit warm. That seems to be the case with basically every supercar we've driven, so if you're going for an ice cream run, you probably want to keep that in the passenger footwell. The car is remarkably civilized to drive for a 661 horsepower mid-engine supercar. There's a decent amount of pedal travel and the throttle mapping is quite well judged, so if you give it just a little bit of gas, you're not going to ram into the car in front of you, which is always good to know. There is Ferrari's very clever electronic stability control management suite that is derived from the F1 race cars. Basically they tested out on the Formula 1 car how to manage the differential, how to manage traction control. That then trickles down to the racing cars. But from all accounts it's an easy car to drive on the limit because Ferrari's electronic sort of safety net gives you a certain amount of slip and side angle it'll take and then reins things in. It does that incidentally by cutting ignition to the engine as opposed to some forms of stability control which use the brakes to slow whichever wheel is over rotating to bring you back into line. There is regular cruise control. There's no adaptive cruise control. There are no sensors up here to do that. There's obviously no lane keeping. It's the Ferrari. If you're driving it, you have to drive it yourself. This is a car that will do well over 200 miles an hour, and even on a great parkway where the speed limit is 55 miles an hour, it's barely even breaking a sweat. Given that you are in a bright red Ferrari that is extremely noisy, is breaking the speed limit something you really want to do on public roads? And actually, these days, the older I get, the answer to that question is invariably no. With this big old V8 in the back, which sounds and part throttle quite a lot like a kind of big burbly American V8. It was quite a strange experience. There's absolutely buckets of torque because of this turbocharged engine. You just leave it in 6th gear and on part throttle, gain a bit of speed and then you just lift and coast and cruise. It's quite a relaxing drive in some ways, which maybe you wouldn't expect of a Ferrari like this. Now, were you to take it on track and twist this little dial all the way there and then have it in full fat, unfiltered, tear my ears off speed mode, I'm sure it's a completely different experience. mentioned, Ferrari are now using turbocharged engines, along with just about everyone else. That means this one only revs to 8,000, and I say only because that's actually extremely good for a turbocharged engine. However, the red line on the previous 458 was much higher in that car. That, you know, if you've heard one going past you at full bore, you probably won't forget. All in all, I think this car has been worth the wait. It's been a lot of fun. We have it for another day, and we're going to enjoy that day. What do you think? Not bad, huh? Let's go see what she can do.